You will begin. Mhm.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Couples Talk. So, as you can see, we're here together again to discuss a wonderful topic. Last week, we had an interesting topic, and after feedback from some of our viewers, we decided to add another element to that particular issue where sometimes persons are wondering, can my marriage actually survive? And today's topic is forgive and forget. Question mark. How to forgive your partner. Now you might be wondering, forgive and forget. What is she talking about? I can't forget. Maybe I might forgive. How is that possible? Now I want to break this down to you because sometimes we don't seem to grasp the concept of the forgive and forget. We might misinterpret what the forgive and forget refers to. So I'll just read some information to you to just highlight what it is we're going to discuss this evening. Forgiveness is a critical tool in marriage. Forgiveness, past hurts, and upholding grudges helps you to maintain your emotional, mental, and physical health. Holding on to hurt destroys your relationship and makes you feel powerless over all lives because you can't take control of the situation or change anything about it. However, forgiveness grants power back by letting go of someone else's actions that change how we live, think, or feel, even if they are no longer around us. Now, you're thinking about this and wondering, really, so if I don't forgive this person, what these things may happen to me? But think about it. When you're going through this emotional struggle, and every time you see the person, you're angry, you're frustrated, thinking, I'm holding on to this grudge because I need to punish him. But they are moving on with their lives and you're angry. You're having chest pains, you're having headaches, you're having emotional struggles because you can't deal with other issues in life because you're holding on to this pain. So what you need to realize is that you're affecting yourself, not them, because whether they accept your forgiveness or not, they will be able to move on, but you're the one struggling with this emotional and physical pain. Another element to this I would like to add is the health benefits of forgiveness. Now, the act of forgiveness reduces the risk of heart attack, lower cholesterol levels, improve sleep, reduce pain, lower your blood pressure, decrease anxiety, depression, and stress. Now, take it from me. You need to forgive. You might be thinking, all these things are affecting me if I don't forgive. Try it. You might be surprised what could happen if you actually take this into consideration. In addition, the hurt you have suffered.
So you're not allowing me to do anything?
Sorry.
Why you not allow me to do anything? You just want to do everything?
Getting so excited.
I realize
I
it's
apologize.
couple stuff.
Yeah,
You
I
know?
know. I just wanted to be psychological there.
Okay. All right, so I have been guilty of not setting this thing up properly. So for those that are probably on with us, if you're hearing us, help me out. Let me know that you're hearing me. Put us a comment in the comment box just to let us know if you're hearing me. Put a thumbs up, anything, because we just don't want to go in another 10 minutes and only to realize no one heard anything we said. I, so Charlene really got into the first segment of this, which is forgive and forget, and we purposely chose that title because we know it's not really possible to forget unless you have some amnesia issue. But we really wanted to jog your mind a bit because there is still an element of forgiveness that you could get to that you may not forget the act of what took place, but the emotional impact that it have on you differs. I mean, think about it for a second. Have you had a situation where someone did you something bad? And when you see them, your blood just boiled, you know, the thoughts come back. It feels like it was yesterday this thing happened. And over time, if you have allowed yourself to let go of that hurt, that you might see the person and the same reaction don't really happen. And that's kind of what we're talking about. So she's saying that there's a bit of an echo art. So that's good. Thank you so much. So just gonna change our mic very quickly, and hopefully just let me know if is there any difference. So we just changed an alternate mic. Let me know if you're hearing any better
Well, I hope they hear me better too.
Yes, so just let us know if you're hearing us any better now. All right, so the notion is you want to get to that point that you might see the person's name might come up in a conversation, but it don't impact you in the way in how it previously did. You don't get that same boiling blood effect that just makes you rethink the episode as it happened again. Right? So that's what we're talking about when we said forget, right? And so as Charlie was about to read the section I wanted to get into, is that we also don't want to be naive. There are different type of hurt. And depending on the level of hurt, it may take you longer. It might require you to do some more work to get it over with. You might need help to get over it. And that help might come from someone that is being trained, maybe counseling, or it might take God, it might take you prayer, it might take you really working through this for you to overcome that. So the hurt you have suffered may make a difference. And it says, it's more difficult to forgive a spouse for years of infidelity than it would a minor mistake such as forgetting to pay a bill on time. All right. So we want to go through a few strategies that might help you in working through forgiveness, and we will alternate these. All right. If you have any questions, again, you could ask them in the comment. Now, this topic is so big, we can't do it in one session. So we decided right off the bat, we're going to break this up into two separate sessions. This session, we're really going to work on how to forgive your partner. So this is from you, the person, that have experienced a hurt. And again, as much as we're looking at this might be in an intimate relationship, this really could happen from a friend, someone that just betrayed you. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in a relationship, okay? So one of the first strategies that I'm going to touch on is be open and receptive to forgive. If you start out on a premise that there are some things you will never forgive, your brain registers that to the point which you may not get to that point because you've already told yourself, I will never forgive this person. And if you start on that premise, it's really hard to work through the strategy. So the first thing, you have to step back and at least be open and receptive to the idea of forgiveness. All right, Charlie, over to you.
Make a conscious decision to forgive your spouse. Now, note how it is phrased. Make a conscious decision. This is not something you're going to wake up and say, okay, I feel to forgive my spouse today, or maybe I feel to give that person who has hurt me today. This means that you're waking up today and saying, here what? They have hurt me, they have betrayed me, they have maybe lost all hope with life. But I have decided I need to move on from this pain. So I am going to forgive them. Now, please know forgiveness is not automatic because every day you will feel different. But you have to remind yourself, I am going to work through this process. So I am going to be determined in how I handle this situation. And by making such a conscious effort and a reminder to yourself that I am going to forgive this person every day, say, I am going to try my best to not allow this to affect me. It's ways how it is you're going to go past healing. So know that I said it's not an automatic decision. It's not something that's automatically going to happen, and it's not something based on feeling, because you will have hurt going through the process. But you have decided, here what, I want to move past this, so I am going to make a conscious effort to forgive this person. That is what it's speaking about. Not an emotional aspect, but more of a purposeful aspect.
All right, the next thing we want to touch on is think of a calming place or something to distract yourself when dwelling on thoughts, when image of betrayal or hurt flash in your mind. Forgiveness is an action of the mind. And we are sometimes incapable of thinking how powerful our mind is. You could be in a mindset, in a mood, or something comes to your mind. You have the power to think something different. You have to be intentional about it. There are times without thinking, out of the blue, it will just flash into your head. You have to be purpose to think on something positive. It might be you might need some help, you might need to play some music, you might need to read something else, you might need, and you have to be careful. Huh? It's amazing how there are certain things that will bring these things back. So you have to almost guard your mind from certain things. If there's certain type of movies that's going to bring back the level of hurt, hey, look, Charlie, I have to laugh about it, right? I know, Charlie, maybe you never really gone to a tobacco scene, right? But Charlie, I remember the first time I get a knuckle. You know what's a knuckle, Charlie?
Explain to the viewers.
You don't know what's a knuckle? All right, for a Caribbean person, right? Maybe an Antiguan might understand what's a knuckle, right? A knuckle is your first action of betrayal. An infidelity, someone you're with the person, sleep with somebody else. Charlie, it seems like every music on the radio station is just reminding me of, it's like if you're hearing, all the music is reminding me of somebody do something to you. You turn on the TV, every single article, every single movie, every single commercial is talking about something that reminds somebody cheat on someone. I don't know if it's because at that time your brain is so sensitive that it picks up more. So you have to be intentional.
It's like when you're driving and you want a red car, and every time you drive, you see a red car.
It's happening. That's the power of the mind. So I'm saying when those thoughts flash into your mind, you got to be intentional to think of something different. You got to be intentional to think of something positive. Think of something that's not, and it can happen. You have a choice to choose to think on something differently and not dwell on that. But you got to be intentional about it.
Refrain from throwing an error or mistake back in your spouse's face at a later date. Don't use it as ammunition in an argument. Now, this goes back to point number 2, making a conscious decision to forgive your spouse. Now, if it is you focus on that point, you have to realize that you can't be holding all their past errors against them and throw it in their face every time you have an argument. Oh, this is why so and so happened, and this is why I want to do. And you're making an argument, and the person is thinking, I can't deal with this anymore, because if you say forgive me, and every minute you're bringing it back up, and every minute you're arguing about it. Now, when they walk out, you say, see, you don't even care about me, and I'm the hurting one. But you keep harboring on this situation. You have to let it go. You have to refrain from doing these things. No, we're not against saying it is easy. We say all this is a conscious decision that you have to make. You have to remember not to bring it back. You have to, when you feel the urge, say, here, what? Count to 10, count to 100, walk away. Take a deep breath. Focus on the current issue. Don't dwell on the past issues.
Charlene, I like being the devil advocate. All right.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I can be the devil advocate. You're telling me I hurt you. Charlie, I go and cheat on you with your coworker.
Jesus.
The same coworker they always asking me, you like one coworker, you should look nice, right? And I say, no, I don't look at coworkers. And you realize I cheat on you with your coworker. After real work, you forgive me. Mm-hmm. So I go back and cheat on that same coworker. You think you're gonna bring up the fact that you cheat with the person before I forgive you?
Hello, that is a different scenario.
Oh, that's different.
No, because when we talk about error, yeah, but we're talking about an error that you made in the past.
Yeah.
But if you keep repeating it, then we have another issue.
So what we're trying to say here is not that there isn't a case for where this become relevant to show a pattern here, but something else may have happened. And it's almost like you're throwing other things on top of that. It may not even have happened. It's in the context of maybe you see me chatting to somebody.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm too sure with it. Where you see we're talking about the same thing I'm talking about. No, you're chatting to somebody on the phone. And that's exactly how you end up on cheek with the other person. How we get to there, we would stick to the issue. I think we spoke about that.
Yeah, sticking to the issue.
There are times that you need to deal with this issue. If you're going to bring up something that, especially when it is unrelated, it might not be relevant to this right now, and you take an opportunity to bring something else back from the past, it makes it very difficult for you to even get to the point. It actually shows that you really haven't forgiven the person.
That you have recommitted to forgiveness. So note the example that you give. If the partner keeps cheating, that's totally different. No, forgiveness doesn't mean forgive them every time they cheat. It means that you need to decide, and the partner needs to decide, do they actually want to change? And if you want to stay with a continuously cheating partner, then that's a whole different story. So please note, we're not encourage you to stay with a partner who is cheating all the time, who is not making a change and saying to forgive. Please, that's what we're talking about here. So that is my disclaimer. Please note that is my disclaimer. So I don't want anyone to think we're encouraging that sort of behavior, because even with forgiveness and dealing with the other person, there must be change. There must be actions of change. So we want that to be noted as well.
We got some pop there. This is loaded, huh? There's some, because there's still some other things that we still have to unpack. And that's why we've already decided to do this in more than one part. And just don't take anything we're saying in isolation. Every situation is different, and we're not trying to cover all situations. We're just trying to give you some strategies that may work or it may not be relevant to your situation. So we're not speaking in all situations here.
It's not absolute.
Accept that you may never know the reason for the transgression, behavior, or mistake. When something has happened to us, our brain won't make sense out of it. And for us, we may decide, I cannot forgive this person unless I understand why did they do that. Unless they could come to me and explain to me and tell me all the details as to why did you betray me, I will never forgive that person. That person needs to earn my forgiveness. What are we saying here? There's some things you might never really get the full answer. And what we're saying here, forgiveness is not for the other person. Realize Charlene started with the health issues that forgiveness has, the lack of forgiveness, having a person, the bitterness, it literally wears on you and on your body. So understand, forgiveness is a gift to yourself, as difficult as it might be, even when you don't know all the circumstances, even when you don't get all the answers, especially where you may not be in communication with this person. Somebody betrayed you as a friend or otherwise, they did lie to you, they cheat on you, they tell something about you behind your back, and you didn't get a quite answer as to why that happened. We're saying, even with that, there needs to be an intentionality to forgive that person for you. But I want to give an alternative, or I want to give a situation that don't necessarily fit within that. If I cheat on Charlie, and that's in Charlene's mind that you did this. And the reason why we dwell on this is because the reality is, when we talk about forgiveness in couple, this is like the one thing that really makes or breaks a relationship. I mean, there's a lot of things I think we get over a little bit easier. But I think that the most trying betrayal in couples that finds the struggle for forgiveness is infidelity. So we don't want to somehow talk around it. It's kind of like the main thing that we have. It's like the most ultimate betrayal. So we want to address that up front, right? you have committed that act against your partner, it is natural for your partner want to understand the details. No, you have to find it within yourself, as hurtful as it might be, to try to brush past the details. That person sometimes need to hear the details and the why as much as possible. Now, this is not something that you should be doing repeatedly. Someone has gone through and then saying, I want you to understand, I want to know what happened. No, there must be at least a prayer that you could do so, but you have to allow that not to be in the past and to put that. It shouldn't be that you're doing that repeatedly over and over, but it should be a degree of openness. This whole line of one thing led to another and this happened, you know, that's a man, that's a couple kind of statement. The one thing led to another and you kind of jump past all the details, and no, that's not going to fly for most women and or most men. You know, you may need to provide some details and context and then allow that person to process that, because what I've come to realize, sometimes the details is way less than the unknown, because the brain is gonna make up stuff. It's gonna fill in the gaps worse than you could even think about. So sometimes you thinking of not telling the details is not as bad as sometimes the facts. All right, over to you. And again, we're not sure. We know we were getting some echo at the beginning. So if somebody could help us, if you're hearing us a little better, can you just give us a comment in the comment box if the audio is sounding, if the audio is reasonable. We're not in our normal space, so we don't have our audio mics and stuff like that. So just let us know if you are hearing us properly.
Refrain from seeking revenge or retribution. Trying to get even will only extend the pain, and chances are good that this won't really make you feel better anyway. This particular one is a common one, especially when we talk about adultery. Recently, someone was telling me, if I knew it would have been this bad, I should have cheated on my spouse. Because the spouse was cheating on them and they felt so betrayed, they wish they had done it back to the spouse. And I had to let them know that doing that would only hurt you because you are the one in the action. Because that is not your personality. So you're going to feel more degraded after the action because you think you're doing it despite them, but you're only affecting yourself because it's not something you're accustomed doing. But they felt so good, they figured they need to repay the action just to punish the spouse. Now we know that many times, as is mentioned, we try to exact revenge or get retribution for the actions. But note that all this is just pain and hurt acting on, and as mentioned, will only affect you. Yes, the person might be affected in the process, but you too will be damaged more from the hurt that you've already experienced. So when you feel this way, find some solace in prayer if you're a praying person. Find solace in counseling. Find solace in something that will give you peace of mind. But I advise you, and you may think I'm being funny, don't do that. Not because I'm telling you not to do it, but because I've seen the repercussion of such an action, and trust me, it does more harm than good to the individual. So focus on healing for yourself and not trying to punish the person, because in the end, you're harming yourself in the end.
Charlene, do for do. You do it for me, I can't do it to you.
Well, if you're willing to stand the consequences, you can go ahead, because remember, the person who commit the action, they have their consequences to deal with also.
You know, this is a touchy topic and one that Charlene is right with that. But here's the part of that that I know becomes a huge part. Men especially, this is common, this is always happened. The man cheats. And he wants to be forgiven. Huh? And I think in that sense, if he's genuine, he deserves to be forgiven. He is forgiven. Somewhere along the line, the other person cheated. Remember, he cheated. She forgave him. No, she cheated. Maybe the mere fact that there is an infidelity or something wrong, maybe you never addressed it, and that person eventually went. And the man would not forgive. The man would, the man would say,
For his ego.
oh,
Well, you
how
could
that could
have
happen? You know what it was. And here's what we say. For man, we're not emotional. It was just a physical act. But for you to do that, it's emotional for you. So how could you have done that? The same way, we as men want forgiveness. In the same manner, we need to be able to forgive and give forgiveness. There's a point in time you can't look at who did what first and how we got here. Remember, forgiveness is not something the other person has to earn. They don't now need to prove to you by if there now there's some things in fairness that we may need to do to rebuild that trust. Now, rebuilding the trust is another stage in that process. But the forgiveness is an action that takes place even before you have dealt with the hurt. I want to say that again.
Because if the act of wanting to forgive or committing yourself to forgive will help all the other aspects to move forward.
I want to say that again.
Because the act of forgiving or wanting to forgive.
So you're trying to say I could forgive even while I'm hurting?
Yes, because if you don't make that commitment to forgive, all the other avenues of what you're trying to improve in the relationship will not take place.
So Charlene has hit the nail on the head here. The forgiveness starts even before the pain and the hurt has gone away. It's one of the first actions you have to take.
Which is why it's a committed step and a conscious action. It's like you decided this is what I need to do to move past it. Not that when I feel better, I will forgive. Because trust me, you will never feel better to forgive. So you have to decide to want to forgive in order to feel better. Trust me, it sounds weird. You might be thinking, what is she talking about? I'm going through pain right now. But you have to be willing to forgive. Note I said you're not forgiving an abuser of someone who's repeating an action with no intent of changing their act and said, I'm going to stay in this situation. You're forgiving to heal yourself. But whether you stay or you go is a different matter. But you need to recover from the pain. So I need to keep repeating that because I want no one to misinterpret what we're trying to say here. I need to emphasize that we don't want people to be mistaken.
Man, Sean, we're running out of time, but this is a big topic. We still have a few more points. Remember that forgiveness does not mean that you condone the hurtful behavior. Sean, you know how to start hitting that.
Yeah.
You could forgive someone, it doesn't mean you have to stay in the situation. I want to say that again. Forgiveness don't mean you have to continue to have a repeat of the action. You could forgive someone that is abusive. You could forgive someone that is continually hurting you. It don't mean you have to remain in that situation. Ideally, if you could work through the issues, both parties, and if the willingness to do so, it's normally our recommendation, but that does not hinder your ability to forgive. All right? So remember that forgiveness does not mean you condone the hurtful behavior.
Be patient with yourself. Being able to forgive your spouse takes time. Don't try to hurry the process. I think I mentioned in the previous points that I highlighted that this is a process that you don't wake up one day and automatically get over the hurt. That you need to understand that I'm making a conscious decision to forgive my spouse, but I have to be patient while I go through it. So just work through the process. Take your time every day, maybe write about it, talk to yourself about it. But don't dwell too much on the pain, meaning that don't allow it to absorb you and consume you so much that you can't focus, that you can't function every day, because then you're going to end up now into more depression. But this is the whole idea saying, I have made this commitment to move on in my life. I need to get over this hurt. So I am going to forgive them. I am going to be patient with my son because it's going to take some time. The typical saying, time heals thanking old wounds or something like that. Yeah, so it is applicable in this situation.
I want to just put in there from the other side. If you are the person that has committed a betrayal, you also need to be patient with the other person. I know it becomes frustrating and you are doing your best to show that, you know, I'm sorry about what has happened, and you want the person to just get over it. Yes, I did. What more you want me to do? But you also have to be a little patient as well and give the person a chance to process it. Hopefully, there's some intentionality to working through that. But it needs to be patient on both sides. You need to be patient with yourself as you're processing the hurt, and the other persons also need to be patient with the person. It takes time. There are going to be some good days, and there are going to be some days that you're just jumpy. You're especially if I get into a betrayal, the person phone rings and you see they left the room or something, and your brain already start churning, and you, the person that has done the betrayal, has to be very intentional. Don't wait for the person to ask. Just out of the blue, just say, hey, that was Tony called me, just wondering about X. So, you know, just let the person know. Just let the person recognize, yeah, that I'm going the extra mile here just to let the person, if you normally come home from work a certain time and you're running late, the person's mind will start thinking. Take the time to call them and say, hey, I'm running late at work, you know, I'm going to be there a little later. Hey, if the person's driving, I need to work a little late. You want to come and meet me at work? Let me just work together. You're going to have to go the little extra mile during this time to kind of give that person a level of comfort. Don't just talk, even though you know you're working late now. Don't just say, but I was working, what do you want me to do? No, you need to go the little extra mile. Number 9, I think this is our last one that we want to do in this part as we look to wrap up. Seek professional counseling to help. Did I think the last one was yours? Did I do 8?
No, I did 8.
You did it. Okay. I just jumped in on your point. All right. Seek professional counseling to help you let go and forgive if you are still unable to forgive. Did I say that right? Counseling to help you let go and forgive. If you are still unable to forgive or you find yourself dwelling on the betrayal or hurt. I think this hits right home for men. Men hate the whole idea of counseling. The whole notion of having to go and talk to somebody else about your problem, man, we hate that. I could tell you that, you know, personally. I hated the first point that Charlie suggested that we go counseling. I'm like, what are you trying to say? Something wrong with us or something wrong with me?
You suggested we go counseling? Tell everybody the truth. You suggested counseling. I didn't suggest.
Yeah, but by that time, you know, you even if it was just, I still hated it. I still hated to have to tell another man or another woman. And even that, you got to, if I would say, I would feel as a man, and I'm just speaking even for a spouse, if you have to choose someone, a man would feel a little bit more comfortable talking to a male counselor. It's the shame of it or what is happening is a little less. I think it's more challenging for a man to be speaking to a female counselor. I'm not saying it don't work, but I'm just trying to share some natural inclination in terms of how that sometimes works. But I'm saying, as a man here, there are times you need that accountability and somebody else to speak to that. Because when your spouse is saying something to you, a lot of time you're taking it personally. You're thinking she's only saying that because she's invested. When somebody else could say, hey, you know, I think that's an unhealthy friendship you have, then it's impacting the relationship. You know, I think you may need to set some boundaries there. Hearing that from somebody objective, it really helps. So it might be difficult. It might not be something you want to hear, but you want to consider that. I'm going to say something else that might be a little controversial for some. And as a Christian, we believe in Christian counseling. I think having a basis of someone that understands God, even within the counseling perspective, is very helpful. At the same time, I want to say not every spiritual leader might be the best counselor. I want to say that
I would
with
just
all
throw it and
premise.
be frank. If he doesn't have a counseling degree along with theological degree, stay away. I be frank.
I mean, there are some people that are blessed.
no,
I am
no,
saying there are some people that are gifted.
Those who are gifted actually did some counseling training.
And you see, as a counselor like you, I'll refer to you. But I have to give that advice because we've gone through that. There are times that we've had spiritual leaders that have counseled us, and to be honest, they made it worse. Some of their suggestions made things worse. And it's, everyone may not always have this gift. So just be mindful as well. Try to get recommendation persons that might have gone through this and that to give recommendations, and we've seen that. So we just want to give that premise. Not every spiritual leader we think sometimes have the gift of marital counseling that sometimes, especially that could bring you back from something like a hurt of infidelity or things like that. There's some blessed people that I think just really have the gift that could really be frank, real with you, and that could still take the spiritual application, but could still use the psychology and the process and strategies to help you get back to that point and to be able to work with you on both sides. All right. So we went over a little bit. This was a really big topic, and I said we're not finished. We've divided this up into 2 segments. So Sean, tell us about next week's episode.
So next week's episode, how to ask for forgiveness. Forgiveness in marriage. When forgiveness is not enough. Now, those are 3 aspects. You're wondering where we're going with this. So tune in next week to listen, to continue. Even you can send us your comments privately about share comments, your thoughts, your experiences about dealing with forgiveness in a relationship. And as you know, we use some of these to help with our topics, because it helps when other persons can share their own comments about it. But this is what we'll be focusing on next week. So take this in mind, consideration, and we look forward to seeing you guys. And remember, like and subscribe to YouTube, Vivid Resolutions Couples Talk, Facebook page, Vivid Resolution. Yes, my website is up. Yes, it's up. vividresolutions.com. Anything else, Joshua?
No, I mean, just a closing thought. This is a big topic, and we may not have emphasized on it, but in everything, we truly believe forgiveness is really a gift from God. There's some things that are difficult to process emotionally. It's just hard.
Could we have a question?
Right? Okay, so we will take one question just before
Look
we
at the
close.
question.
Okay, Kirby, can these sessions be an hour instead, guys? I mean, yes, it can. We just found that sometimes an hour session, you're kind of trying to hold people attention is a lot, but we'll consider it. We just find that people's time is important, and we just believe we want to give you as much information we can in a reasonable time, and then we would break it up because we value your time. But if you think there's some topics that we will go on, we will do so, but that's the reason why we try to stick to half an hour. We value your time, and we want to ensure that we could really share the things that are relevant for us, but we will consider that in the future. But just as I was closing my thought there's some things that are just difficult, and forgiveness is one of those things. So as much as we're saying this, we've struggled with forgiveness. I have struggled with forgiveness for years. There were some people that every time I saw them, my blood just boiled, and the hurt just came like yesterday. And I'm saying it's only by God's grace that He could brought me to that point where I recognized that forgiveness was not for that person. That when I start seeing that person, my emotions move from hate to almost pity. that I could look at that person and see that that person is actually insecure, that person is actually troubled inside, and that's probably some of the reason why that person treated me so unfairly that I didn't understand. And it's only God could have given me that insight that I could see that person today and actually in some way pray for them because I realized they're hurting inside and that's the way they respond to it. And that I could literally have their best intention in mind because God has told me I am better than that. I am valuable and I deserve to have a peace of mind. So I'm doing this because God wants me to have a peace that could overcome all challenges. So that's that's kind of my closing thought. What do you, Michelle?
Well, I think you said it for both of us.
All right, so thank you for tuning in. We're so happy that those who leave the comment to let us know about our audio. And again, let's share this message. It may be somebody that you know that needs to hear about this. Share it with someone, send it to them, send them a link. You might be surprised that you're blessing someone and they needed to hear this in some way. All right, so enjoy your evening and we will talk to you in our next episode.
Okay, bye everyone.